So the next type of link we'll look at is something called a relative link. Basically, this is a link that goes to a document that you've created, not a full separate external web page. So if I have a second document, which I currently don't, but let's make another one. We'll call this, contact.html. They have nothing to do with one another, but let's just put some content in here. So I'm going to do that shortcut, !tab. I'll change the title to be contact. And then the H1 will say, or I'll put an H1 that says, why are you not auto-completing? There we go. Do not contact me, please. And you know what? Maybe we should put a strong in here. So it's do not contact me, please. So I'm not going to see that web page if I just refresh, right? Because that's a totally separate document. So what I can do is just edit my URL to get there because it's in the same folder and it's called contact.html. And this is one way of doing it. And we see do not contact me, please. Right? Here's our first web page. Here's the contact page. But I want to connect them. I'm going to add a link here in my LI, or in a new LI, in my UL that says contact page or contact us or something. And I need to put in the correct URL to locate this page called contact. Now this is a very simple example. They're in the same folder, so I don't have to do anything fancy. I can just write contact.html. So I don't do www or I don't do http:/, none of that stuff. It's not a separate website. It's not some external website someone else created. It's just a different file. So if I save and I go back to my first web page, here's my contact us link. If I click it, it takes me now to contact.html. Now, if I had different folders, right, if this was nested in a folder called other pages, I could then reference it like this, other pages / contact.html. But that folder doesn't exist. So if I refresh the page and I try to click this link, I'm going to get an error. It says I can't find that file. So the path that I use, the name and the location really matters. Just like it does with a website, right? If you misspell this, you're kind of out of luck. Same thing here. So that's an example of a relative link. Now we have another type of link that I showed you on the MDN webpage. It's also all over Wikipedia, which is a link to other elements on the same page. So things like this sidebar in Wikipedia, if I want to learn more about the paleontology of moose, I can click this and it takes me down to this section called paleontology. So it didn't go to another page, another website. It's the same exact page. To help illustrate this, I'm going to make a lot of content. What I'm going to do is write a paragraph and I'm going to type lorem times 5 and I'm going to hit tab. So that times 5 tells VS Code I want 5 times the normal amount of lorem ipsum text. And then I'll duplicate this and just keep copying and pasting. I just want like a couple, dozen different paragraphs. So if I save and refresh, I now have a lot of content in here. And let's say that this is all important content and there's a heading down here somewhere, maybe towards the bottom, like right here, there's an H2 and it's all about my pet chickens. Okay, so I want to create a link to take somebody to this part of my webpage all the way from up top. They click it and it takes them down here, just like we saw in Wikipedia, just like it's all over MDN, these links here. It takes me to a different part of the page. The way that we do this is going to be new. We add a special attribute to our section, the destination, whatever I want to link to. This attribute is called an ID. So we're going to learn more about IDs when we cover CSS, but think of it as just an identifier, a name for an element. So this can be anything. I wouldn't put a space in there though. That's going to cause problems. But I can just call it like chickens. That's what this H2 is about. I'll call it chickens. It doesn't change anything about the display. Refresh, it looks exactly the same. However, behind the scenes, it now has an identifier. And then I can create a link with the href that corresponds to the name of that ID. So I'll do that now. Let's make an li with an anchor tag, and the text will just say, my chickens. Then this href, it has to start with what's called the octothorpe or pound symbol or whatever you want to call this above the 3 key, right? Shift 3. And then the name of my ID, which was chickens. Let me double check. Did I definitely call it chickens? I've lost it. There it is. Yes. So it must be spelled the same way. This is just a way to say, hey, there's a sticker, basically a label on this element, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a heading, but it often is. And then whatever that name is, you link to it with a pound symbol in front. And if I refresh my page, if I click my chickens now, it takes me down to the bottom to this my chicken section, as you can see right there. So if I didn't spell that correctly, or I don't have the pound symbol, now it is not going to work. It's trying to find a web page called chickens. But if I put that pound sign in there, it's telling it, no, this is on the same web page. Look for an element with the ID of chickens. And along with this, you should know that you really can only have one ID of chickens on the page. So you can have as many IDs as you want. I can put another one way down at the bottom here. Make this an H2 that has the ID of, how about cats? So the text is cats, ID equals cats. I can then link to that. If I make another li with another anchor element, and that can go to cats, and the text will be my cats. There's no problem here. If I click my cats, it takes me down to cats. Now, you might be thinking, well, didn't it just take me to chickens? What happens here is that there's just not much content between them, so it kind of looks like it's taking me to the same place. But let me just make a lot more paragraphs in between and make our page a lot longer. Okay, so now if I click my cats, it does take me to the cats heading. And if I click my chickens, it takes me to the chickens heading, but they have different IDs. That's all I wanted to say. Don't duplicate this, because then the browser will get confused. Which one does it link to? An ID is supposed to be unique. So we'll learn more about IDs when we get to CSS. They have other uses, but for now, if we set up an ID, it's just a label on some element. I can then link to it using an anchor tag, where I prefix the name of that ID with a pound sign.